This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets. The share of Russian oil in India's overall imports rose to about 2/5 in the first half of fiscal 2023-24, consolidating Moscow's position as the top supplier as refiners curbed purchase from the Middle East, industry data showed. India, the world's third largest oil importer and consumer, has emerged as the top buyer of the discounted Russian seaborne oil after Western nations stopped buying from Moscow following its invasion of Ukraine. Middle Eastern supplies are also likely to tighten further following Saudi Arabia's decision to extend its voluntary output cuts through the end of this year, prompting India to consider other options.
Rising costs of crude oil are squeezing profits at China's independent refineries amid stiff competition for limited Russian supply, while the price of Venezuelan crude gains ground after the U.S. freed up sanctions on its industry. The refineries, known as teapots, account for about a fifth of shipments into the world's top crude importer. They have processed crude for more than a year mainly from Iran, Russia and Venezuela, all facing Western sanctions, to reap savings of billions of dollars from the cheap feedstocks.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Africa is at the forefront of a global wave of new floating gas facilities as countries on the continent seek to meet surging demand in Europe as quickly and cheaply as possible, analysts and energy companies told Reuters. Eni, BP and smaller independent players such as Nigeria's UTM Offshore are driving the surge with projects on Africa's east and west coasts. Floating liquefied natural gas, FLNG, vessels shipped Mozambique's first ever gas exports last November, and the Republic of Congo is preparing for its first LNG exports in December.
An investigation into the damage to the Baltic Connector gas pipeline is currently focused on the role of the Chinese new Polar Bear container vessel, Finland's National Bureau of Investigation, NBI, said on Friday. Early on October 8, a gas pipeline and a telecoms cable connecting Finland and Estonia were broken, in what Finnish investigators said may have been sabotage, though they have yet to conclude whether it was an accident or a deliberate act. On Tuesday, Sweden said a third link, connecting Stockholm to Tallinn, had been damaged at roughly the same time as the other two.
Next, we have the top news in metal markets.
The global refined copper market showed a 33,000 metric tons deficit in August, compared with a 30,000 metric tons deficit in July, the International Copper Study Group, ICSG, said in its latest monthly bulletin. For the first 8 months of the year, the market was in a 99,000 metric tons surplus compared with a 313,000 metric tons deficit in the same period a year earlier, the ICSG said. World refined copper output in August was 2.25 million metric tons, while consumption was 2.28 million metric tons.
Gold extended gains on Friday and headed for a second consecutive weekly gain, as fears of a further escalation in the Middle East conflict fed bullion's safe haven appeal. Spot gold was up 0.3% at $1,979.39 per ounce by 3:04 p.m. Eastern Time, 19:04 GMT, after hitting its highest since May earlier in the session. U.S. gold futures settled 0.7% higher at $1,994.40. Israel leveled a northern Gaza district after giving families a half-hour warning to escape, and hit an Orthodox Christian church where others had been sheltering, as it made clear that a command to invade Gaza was expected soon. We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector. Parboiled rice export prices in top hub India declined for the third straight week on sluggish demand, primarily due to the extension of export duties until March 2024. Prices for India's 5% broken parboiled variety fell to $510 to $520 per metric ton from $515 to $525 last week. Last week, buyers were waiting for the government's decision on the duty. This week, some of them started buying after the government provided clarity. However, demand is still far lower than normal, said Akash Junjunwala, a rice miller based in Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh. India announced an extension of the 20% export duty, initially set to expire on October 15 to March 2024.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.